A man without ethics is like a monster loosed upon the world. Well, we have an economic system without ethics. We are dominated at this point by a system that seems to lord over all of us. This is an abusive relationship at this point. You can make it in America if smart enough, talented enough, got the stuff.
That's a personal growth.
Well, but it's more than that. Somebody should be able to work at just one job. Somebody should be able to support to feed their kids, even if they don't go to personal growth seminars. Martin Luther King said, if they give it to the poor, they call it a handout. If they give it to the rich, they call it a subsidy.
Marianne, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your time and being here, sharing all this amazing information that you have for us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm sure you have a busy schedule today.
Well, that's part of what campaigning is all about.
How's that going?
It's a grueling experience, but exhilarating in its own way because, Martin Luther King once said, your life begins to end on the day you stop talking about things that matter.
I like that.
And I think that's really what people are longing for right now, whether we're talking about personal growth or whether we're talking about politics. We've got to start talking about the things that really matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have a few questions that I'm sure the community will appreciate it and wants to hear. So I was actually going through a few videos that you created, and you use begin again. What does it mean to you, begin again? In one of the videos you mentioned that.
Well, I think life is hard sometimes, and we all go through situations where we feel that either we or others or both made mistakes, messed up, and we're living with the consequences of that. And faith, whether you see this in terms of religious or spiritual terms, or whether you just think of it as a secular recognition of how the universe operates, is the idea that you can always start over. You can atone for your own mistakes. You can forgive other people for theirs. I once read a book many years ago, The Myth of the Eternal Return. Okay. The idea that situations come back around, even if it's a different town, even if it's different people. You find that your life always gets back to some pattern in your life. How did you play it last time? You could play it better this time. We can always begin again. And I think that that's particularly relevant to where our country is right now, because the whole country's in a funk. Everything's a crisis. It's like we're in a state of permanent crisis, just one after the other. And it's very tempting to kind of spiral down emotionally. And I think a lot of people are. We're feeling the situation is locked up. I think that's why work such as yours is important, to show on a personal level, hey, no matter what the situation is, we can rise up. We can triumph. We can live lives of abundance and prosperity and victory no matter what. And I think that part of the point of my campaign is to demonstrate that this is as true of a country as it is of an individual.
Oh, wow. Okay. Let me go back a little bit before we go in the deeper questions. Because I know you wrote a few books already. 15, yes. The Return to Love, we were talking about it.
That was my first book.
That was the first one? Okay. So what makes you change to start in the politic? Because I know you were doing the spiritual kind of thing. What makes you change and start doing this?
Well, my 40-year career has been about personal growth, personal change. And from the very early days of my career, particularly because I found myself in the middle of the AIDS crisis, working very deeply with that. So from the very beginning of my career, I worked very up close and personal with people whose lives were in crisis. It was AIDS, it was cancer, it was the loss of a loved one, it was bankruptcy, it was divorce, it was finding out your child was on heroin, whatever it was. So I've had a lot of experience with those dark hours in people's lives. There used to be a joke. I used to hear people say, you don't call Marianne when things are going well. She's the go-to girl when oops,
when
right?
Everything goes bad.
And you've already seen the lawyer, the doctor, the accountant, and now you're looking, what are those internal dynamics that need to change in order for us to transform a situation? What happened about 20 years after my career began is that I began to encounter a lot of people whose lives were in crisis, but this was the difference. In the early days of my career, the period of crisis was the exception and not the rule in people's lives. Life seemed pretty good for most people that I met, and then terrible things sometimes happen. The proverbial shit happens. But what started to happen, I saw 20 years ago, was that too many people's lives are in crisis too often, that the country itself is in a permanent state of crisis. And I began to see how many times people's crisis was due to bad public policy, to the fact that people were struggling for health care, that they could not work at just one job, that they were afraid to send their kids to school, that they couldn't live on their salaries, and they were living in a permanent state of paycheck to paycheck or economic anxiety. And I realized you can help people endure and transform crises all you want, but if the society is set up in such a way that a state of crisis is almost bound to return, then we have to address some deeper root cause.
What is it? What is the root cause?
The root cause of societal dysfunction is the same thing as the root cause of personal dysfunction. There's lovelessness somewhere. I read a quote the other day from the French philosopher Albert Camus, and he said, "A man without ethics is like a monster loosed upon the world." Well, we have an economic system without ethics. We are dominated at this point by a system that seems to lord over all of us. And that's why we struggle for health care, because of insurance company profits. We have people rationing their insulin because of pharmaceutical profits. We have carcinogens in our food because of big food profits. We have the farming sector destroyed, decimated, farmers sent into trauma, sometimes suicide, because of big agriculture taking over the entire sector. We have a lack of gun safety laws that are just common sense, and there's violence on our streets in large part because of profits of gun manufacturers. We are ramping up fossil fuel extraction rather than ramping it down because of profits of big oil companies. And we have been in our lifetime in wars, namely Iraq, the last 20 years of Afghanistan, which in retrospect proved to have been nothing more, basically, than profit-making ventures for defense industries. At some point in our personal lives, you've got to get honest with yourself. You've got to look in the mirror. You can't change what you don't face. There's that famous quote from James Baldwin, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed that is not faced." Right. So we have to face the fact that we have, over the last 50 years, begun to govern our country according to corporate profits. If you make short-term corporate profits your bottom line, your governing principle, that supersedes democracy. It supersedes the principles of equality for all and inalienable rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It supersedes humanitarian values. Now, there are people, yourself are obviously one, who have what it takes to rise up. And I do think that we have developed in our society to the point, and this is something, because there was a time when that wasn't true. We live at a point where I believe, no matter what your color, no matter what your ethnicity, no matter where you came from, you can make it in America if smart enough, talented enough, got the stuff.
That's a personal growth.
Well, but it's more than that. Even with personal growth, and I do believe in personal growth. I believe in miracles. I've written books, and I've worked with many, many thousands of people. Somebody shouldn't have to study personal growth to have a dignified life.
I agree.
Somebody should be able to work at just one job. Somebody should be able to pay to support, to feed their kids, even if they don't go to personal growth seminars. It just simply should not be so hard for people. I'm old enough that I remember in the 1970s, the average American couple could afford a house and could afford a car and could afford a yearly vacation, and they could afford for one parent to stay home with the kids, and they could afford for to send their kids to college. And In the last 50 years, there has been a $50 trillion transfer of wealth away from the bottom 90% of Americans to the top 1%. There is no middle class today. It's collapsed.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that I have about middle class.
That's right. What is middle class today? If you have 62% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, if you have the kind of housing crisis we have, particularly young people who can't even, they come out of college, they have tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more than that in college loan debt, and they can't even imagine being able to buy a house. So many people whose young, not young children, but young adult children, at the time when those young adults should be out there making their way, starting their lives, and they're living in their parents' basement. This is not always just the fault of the young person. If these kids are trapped with these college loan debts, we should be setting our young people up to win, not cutting them off at the knees.
Okay.
But these situations are just where we're living at a time where it's almost like, well, just accept it. And people have been trained to expect too little. We've been trained to limit our political imaginations, and we've got to pull ourselves out of this. And just as you would, in personal growth, we tell people, do not stand for abusive relationships. Do not stand for toxic relationships. And that should apply to political relationships as well.
Absolutely.
This is an abusive relationship at this point. If you have a government which more than not enables all that corporate dominance and time again passes policies that do more to create wealth creation opportunities for the donor class than for the average American, that's an abusive relationship because they are doing that with our tax dollars.
Absolutely. So with all this knowledge or all these, what you see, what's the number one thing that you looking to change?
The president, first of all, describes a moral vision for this country. I don't believe President Biden describes a moral vision for this country. Unfortunately, former President Trump does describe a vision for this country, but it is anything but moral. It is based on fear. It is based on separation. And, a lot of people say, well, I don't like his personality, but I like his policies. I don't think you can separate the two. I don't think you can separate the two. And I believe that we have a mission statement in this country. It's our Declaration of Independence. It is the core ideal that has driven many of us, our parents, our grandparents, to come here to begin with. The idea that here all men are seen as created equal. No matter where you come from, no matter who your parents are. I mean, that's radical. It was radical in 1776, and it's radical today, that all men have inalienable rights of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, that government is instituted to secure those rights, and if that's not happening, it's the right of the people to alter it. Well, we have to, in every generation, really take in what that means. And when we do, we have a vision of the country in which we are adamant that no matter what your ethnicity, no matter what your sex, sexuality, you should have the same chance at thriving here. And those issues are as true today as they ever were. They are relevant to reproductive rights, telling a woman what she can do with her body. They are relevant to transgender and the attacks on transgender Americans. They are relevant to anti-Semitism, homophobia, racism, bigotry. And those of us who embrace the idea that none of that belongs here, that nobody owns this country, nobody has a monopoly on truth, and all of us should get to just do what we want to do, spread our wings, fly as high as you want, that your own work and achievement level takes you here. Those are the issues of personal growth, but also all that a nation is a group of individuals. So if those issues apply to an individual's life, those issues apply to a nation, and public policy should be aligned with that dedication to infinite possibilities for the individual. And a policy that allows big food companies to put carcinogens in our food, policies that allow gun manufacturers to resist any common sense gun safety laws. If we have policies that allows big oil to ramp up fossil fuel extraction rather than ramping it down, even though we know how dangerous that is to our future, that is the opposite of public policy aligned with the principles of the Declaration of Independence.
Got it. That's very interesting because that's huge topic that we can talk for hours. But talking about immigration.
Yes.
So I'm an immigrant. You know, my parents, they came here to US when I was 14. So I've been through that. What do you think it needs to change as well in immigration?
My grandparents, all four of my grandparents came here from Belarus, what is today Belarus, escaping oppression. And my father was an immigration lawyer. My brother is an immigration lawyer. Okay. And I grew up in Houston, Texas. So I have lived my life. I grew up around the immigrant story. And I viscerally not only understand, but I'm devoted to the notion of the importance of asylum. Okay. Now, we need to deal with immigration not only on the issue of the symptom, but also on the issue of the cause. On the issue of the symptom, the problem is that Congress has failed us. There should be the proper infrastructure by which people, when they come in, humanely held while these interviews take place. Where is their credible fear established? Where there is credible fear established for asylum, that person should then be led to their next journey, the next step in their journey of integration into American society. And we should remember that if a person who comes here, who immigrates here, is given the help they need to get started within the first year, within a year, statistically, they are self-sufficient. And it's important to remember that the immigration population as a whole is more of a contributor than any kind of suck on the American economy. But we also have to address the issue of cause. Now, there are two main categories that drive people to immigrate here in these great numbers. One has to do with economic despair, and the other has to do with fear of the violence of the drug cartels. Right. In both cases, American policy has affected the situation and can affect the situation. In terms of the economic destabilization of many countries in Latin America, American foreign policy has its fingerprints all over it. I think we need to remove the sanctions in Venezuela. I think we also need to remove the sanctions in Cuba. And I believe that we need to act in a way with our dollars that helps to repair some of what has been broken through our own misguided policies in Latin America that actually led to the destabilization of some of these economies. That's number one. Number two, I think that we should end America's war on drugs. As we end America's war on drugs, this takes a lot of the black market power from the drug cartels. It won't fix it entirely, but it will take a lot of their power away. So once again, we need to address the symptom, the level of the symptom, the externalities, but we also need to address the level of cause.
Love it. Okay. Yeah, that's a huge topic because, like there's a lot of immigrants paying taxes and working and adding to
and forced to live in the shadows.
Exactly.
It is absolutely wrong. When I was young, Ronald Reagan gave amnesty to 6 million people. People are forced to live in fear. And of course that's getting worse with laws such as those that are coming out of Texas. So we need to do more than, I feel sometimes that the Democratic Party, I think even with President Biden building the wall, he is almost like trying to prove that he can be tough on immigration too. What we need to do is create a counter narrative to the Greg Abbotts of the world. We need to create a narrative, which is the declaration, it's the Statue of Liberty. We must be welcoming. And even though we can't take in everyone, and we should take people in according to legal means, at the same time, we need to address some of the devastation that drives people here and some of the ways that we have contributed.
So basically, you're saying if a person, an immigrant, is self-sufficient and it's adding to the country, you will try to find ways to help them out.
Absolutely. The whole 421A, making people go. We create so much trauma. We create so much pain and fear in families. Children who are afraid that their parents might be taken away. People who work hard, who contribute to the economy, who live with this fear. And if they show up at the office, they're told to show up at the office. I don't know if they show up at the office, they might deport me. So they live in this state where they're not doing what they're told to do. No, this is wrong. It is wrong, and it will change when I'm president.
Love it. In terms of you mentioned the middle class. Is dying. So there's a big separation with the rich and the poor.
There sure is.
So how can we help people in the middle class as now?
Well, let's talk about how all that happened, because it didn't come from out of the
Yes.
blue. So starting in the 1980s, there was this idea, one of the most malevolent ideas, as it turns out, to have ever come down the pike, and that is trickle-down economics.
Okay.
The idea was that if we did everything we could to make more money for the stockholder class, then that would be good, because they would create jobs. And then all those jobs would trickle down, it would lift all boats. It was called trickle-down economics. After 40, 50 years, the jury is in. It did not lift all boats. It threw millions of people off the boats they were already on. It left millions of people without even a life vest. So at this point, what we're talking about is the fact that we passed policies where the corporation began to believe that its only job was fiduciary responsibility to its own stockholders. Now, the idea was that their business model would be job creation, but their business model was not job creation. Their business model was job elimination in order to create more money for the stockholders. Job elimination, worker exploitation, the demonization of unions. So all stakeholders other than the stockholders were given short shrift. As long as the stockholder makes more money, doesn't matter if there's carcinogens in the food. As long as stockholders make more money, doesn't matter that people are rationing their insulin. Yeah. As long as stockholders make more money, and this has had a devastating effect. It has had a devastating effect on people's lives. It has had a devastating effect on the middle class. It has had a devastating effect on our communities and on our planet. We need to change. We need to stop these. In 2017, there was a $2 trillion tax cut. It gave 83 cents of every dollar to the richest corporations and individuals. We should repeal that tax cut. The Democrats should have repealed it when they had the House, the Senate, and the White House in the first 2 years of Biden's administration. Put back in the middle-class tax cuts, because there were middle-class tax cuts as part of that bill that were a good idea. The Democrats should have done it when Obama was president. But repeal it, put back in the Republicans, and take it back to the tax rates which were there in place before before that 2017 tax cut. So in other words, fair taxes for the very wealthy. There should also be a wealth tax, that if someone has $50 million, that they pay an extra 2%. It will not ruin your day if you have $50 million in the bank. If someone has $1 billion in assets, they should pay, in addition to that too, they should pay an extra 1%. And that will not affect the day of their great-grandchildren. Why are we protecting the very rich the way we do in this country? Martin Luther King said, if they give it to the poor, they call it a handout. If they give it to the rich, they call it a subsidy. So that takes me to the next issue. We subsidize these multi-billion-dollar companies, these industries that make billions of dollars in profit. We subsidize. Now remember, when we talk about the government giving money, that is your money. So let's be very clear. That's what we pay, your money. Taxes, so we absolutely subsidize these huge industries that already make billions of dollars, and then they turn around and price gouge us. So let's give an example. You have 1 in 4 Americans living with medical debt. Our entire medical debt is $88 billion. But if you take the top 5 pharmaceutical companies, their profit last year alone was $80 billion.
Oh, wow.
I don't think that you can overestimate the level of despair that occurs in this country because we have allowed corporations to rule the world. We have moved from a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, to a government of the corporations, by the corporations, for the corporations.
So are you thinking in making changes on the tax law?
Well, absolutely. I want to repeal that 2017 tax cut.
Okay.
I want to see a wealth tax. Okay. I want to stop those corporate subsidies, and I think we should cut our military budget. Now, the president does not have a magic wand. It's not like, nor should the president have a magic wand. We are 3 co-equal branches of government. So when I say what I want to see, that doesn't mean that within 6 weeks all those things would be happening. But it would be my communication to the American people, as it is in this campaign. And then in my presidency, people could see, well, that's what she's going for. And then the American people will have to do more than elect me. They must elect congresspeople and senators who are aligned with those ideas as well. But I actually think that there are people in Congress who would love nothing better than a president who would say, let's open up these possibilities. To me, the function of government is to help people thrive. This is your money. That should be the purpose of policy, to help people thrive. And I think that when we return to that notion, things will begin to right themselves.
Good. So same topic, middle class. So now I'm in the mortgage industry, and I see a lot of people having a hard time trying just to afford a house right now. With the rates, prices, and all that stuff, and people having these limits on income and all those things. How can we change that? How can we help them?
So you go back to what I said before, that in the 1970s, the average American couple could afford a house.
Yeah.
Today, it's like a dream. And I am particularly concerned about our young people, the hopelessness. They can't even imagine ever being able to afford a house. First of all, you have the problem of the way BlackRock, Vanguard, and others have bought up whole swaths of real estate. The commodification of real estate is exactly what I'm talking about. They've commodified and financialized everything. That's what this sociopathic economic system does. It doesn't look at people. It only look at profits. Everything's a commodity, even people. It financializes everything. It is a poison. It is a moral poison. So what has happened is that, and what should happen, what we should do is we should absolutely tax these companies that are doing this to decrease the probability that they will continue. If that does not work, we should pass a law, and we should say, if you're going to actually live in that house, you get first dibs. Now, I have an economic bill of rights that people can see on my website, Marianne 2024.
Okay.
And
this, put the link below.
Yeah. And there is, in the Economic Bill of Rights, there is the idea of guaranteed affordable housing. We basically need a Marshall Plan for the United States.
So guarantee, what do you mean guarantee?
Well, we have right now many, many houses, many situations which could be habitable if we made them so. We could create, it's kind of like during the New Deal, during a Roosevelt administration, when there was a public works project. We could put millions of people to work making some of these houses habitable, and many of the people who are in those jobs actually would probably be the people who would live in them. Maybe you've seen some of these tiny house projects. I think they exist in Nevada as well.
Yeah,
you know, in this area, as in every area, we have what it takes. We know what to do to fix the problem. But fixing the problem runs counter, in many cases, to the corporate bottom line. And that corporate bottom line is what we must challenge. The corporate short-term profit for stockholders should not be more important than the safety, health, and well-being of the American people.
Nice. I like
and
that.
You need a president who knows that.
Yeah.
And a president who says it.
That part, you know, like finding ways to create housing opportunity for, you know, anyone, basically anyone. I love that. So my next question is on what else can do you looking to do in the housing? You know, the rates are up. You know, we have these high rates with inflation. How do you see? What do you see on that? Like, how can we?
You know,
make it
when
better?
You're talking about the government coming in and having price controls and all of that, that's the most radical thing. Let's not jump to that first.
Okay.
You know, let's do the things I'm talking about first. It's a big move for the government to come in and to take control of the market that way. That's
it's going to be complicated.
We don't really want to do that in America, except in an emergency situation. And we need. Let's take first things first. Let's impose a big tax on those companies. Let's pass a law that people could get there. Let's talk in terms of a domestic Marshall Plan on housing. I'd like
that will be amazing. Helping others with the housing, just based on that will be
and that's
huge
why
step.
in the Economic Bill of Rights there is the idea that. There is the idea that it's a guarantee that people, this is, you know, we're one of the richest nations in the world. This is not. We've been, and I think I said this before, we've been trained to expect so little.
Mm-hmm.
We've been trained. There's a saying that a friend told me in the country he comes from. Dear God, don't make me poor, but if I have to be poor, please don't let it be in America.
Oh, wow. That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. I never heard that before.
And I think that runs counter to what most Americans think. Most Americans, we've been manipulated to believe that it's so great here. Mm-hmm. Well, for 20% of us, it is.
What do you think about medical? Like, a lot of people having hard time, even they have insurance and all this stuff, and that can be pretty expensive, and that's something that people in the community, they struggle every day, because it's just basic stuff, basic needs.
Well, I hope that people will look at my whole health plan. We need to have, in terms of treating illness, we need to have a Medicare for all plan. There should be universal health care. We should not have 85 million people underinsured or uninsured. We should not have 18 million people who cannot afford to pay for their prescriptions. We should not have over 1 million people rationing their insulin and so forth. So that's number one. But number two, we also have to begin to proactively create health. I want to not only create Medicare for all, support Medicare for all for universal coverage, I also want to proactively create a healthier America. For that, we need to look at our food policies. We have a higher rate of chronic illness in the United States than they have in any other advanced democracy. Mm-hmm. And look at why. First of all, we have carcinogens in our food that they would not allow in other countries. Why is that? Well, a food company just finds out that if we put that particular chemical in the food, it'll have a longer shelf life. Having a longer shelf life will make more money, and that will improve, once again, stockholder value. But what it also does is it causes cancer. Right? This has to do with our environmental policies. It has to do with the fact that 46% of our urban water wells are filled with these forever chemicals, PFAS. It has to do with the toxins in our air causing children to have asthma. It has to do with the fact that there are food deserts in this country where children aren't getting fresh vegetables and fresh fruits. A lot of the obesity is due to the fact that these children it's not that they're not eating enough, it's that their bodies want certain nutrients, and the nutrients are not available, so the body just goes, well, give me calories.
Right.
We need to address this, and we need a president who will address this. So for me, it has to do with, and once again, I want people to look at the whole health plan. Mm-hmm. Another thing about my whole health plan that I think is wonderful. We have a very pharmaceutically oriented medical system. We have pharmaceutical companies that pay a lot of money to our medical schools, for instance. In most medical schools, the average medical student has like maybe half a year learning about food. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I have in my whole health plan is, let's say you go to a doctor and the doctor prescribes, understands what's wrong with you and prescribes a pharmaceutical. According to my plan, that doctor's office has to open up their computer. And they have to search that disease or search that condition. Mm-hmm. If in fact there is a proven efficacious non-pharmaceutical treatment for that condition, you, the patient, gets to know about it.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Did you know that?
We're going to change some things.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that. So that's because we were having a podcast with one of my friends the other day, and he's in the creating these programs, helping people that don't have insurance, and they come and they basically help them out, So that's a huge one. On terms of thinking on the middle class, let's say a person is trying to create a business, small businesses, because that's something that we see more often out there. So what do you see? What are your thoughts in those people that wants to create a business?
Okay, well, first of all, let's talk about our youth population and how
Okay.
many tens of millions of these young people are burdened by these college loan debts, who would love nothing more than to get into the game.
Yeah.
We're a very entrepreneurial people, and Latin culture, Latino culture is very entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I mean, that's proven statistically. You got that kind of entrepreneurial gene.
Yeah.
You know,
We're gonna grow, we're gonna survive,
but you've got to have cash. You know, a man said to me, the problem with young people today is they don't have enough respect for capitalism. And my response was, maybe if they had some capital. If you have these college loan debts, these kids would love nothing more than to have $2,500 in discretionary income that they could get started with the website, etc. And we should also have a much more robust small business administration. If you look at the jobs created by small businesses, you look at the jobs created by small businesses versus the jobs created by huge corporate industries. The number of jobs created by small business is just under. So why are we subsidizing huge corporate industries that are already making billions of dollars rather than subsidizing the average American just trying to get started?
Yeah. I see that.
I see that too.
I see that big time. So talking about Hispanic community. Okay. So we want to, like you said, we want to create business. We want to, have a better life than where we came from.
And that's
right?
what this should be. That's what we should offer in 2024.
Yeah.
That's what we'll win in 2024, offering people the possibility of a better
The
life.
opportunity. Cool. So before ending, what's the message that you want the Hispanic community to hear from you?
First of all, that I acknowledge the brilliance. I get it. I see it. I grew up in Houston. I think that's right there. I recognize your contribution. That's number one. I also recognize the blocks to your full flowering, which are the same as the blocks to full flowering of everyone else. That I hope you will join with me in bringing your best ideas to how we can turn this ship around. No matter how we got here, no matter when we got here, part of the radicalism of this country, once you're here, you're an American. Once you're an American citizen. We've got to, on a certain level, all get out of our silos. Because as important as it is that a Latino or Hispanic person addresses issues of the Hispanic community, gay people address the issues of gay people, Jewish people address the issues of Jewish people, black people address the issues of black people. That's important. But there's another conversation that goes along with that. You're a Jewish American. You're a black American. You're a Latino American. And right now, at this moment in history, we need to be having a conversation about America. What you and I were just talking about right now, it was relevant to the Latino community, but it's actually relevant to everyone. And if we have this conversation only in terms of my group, we need to rediscover within ourselves that just being an American gives you rights, and the government needs to protect those rights, but also gives us profound responsibility as a generation to be the keepers of this flame, the keepers of this ideal, to work in our time to expand it to our people and to all Americans, and also to protect it against assault. And that assault is coming not only from without, but also from within.
Absolutely. I agree with the Americans. It doesn't matter, where you came from. The reason I was asking that question is because, unfortunately, like Hispanics, we don't educate ourselves, either politics, economics, and all that stuff. So bringing this kind of content, this information to the community, they get conscious about the things and the opportunity you can bring as a president. So
I heard a woman yesterday, a Latino woman, and she said something that I thought was interesting. Her comment, and you can tell me whether this is true, her comment was something like, we're scared to speak up about corporate dominance. because we're trained to think, I don't know what you're trained to think, but when she said that, she said, we are particularly afraid to speak up. And I think I can see where that would be true, but I think that all of us have to have courage right now.
I agree. Yeah. To a point, of course, yeah, we get this scarcity mindset, and that's something that's holding the community, right? And anyone, it doesn't matter, like you said, Americans, it doesn't matter, Hispanic, white, whatever. But I believe that if we create a system or something that we can help educate anyone in economics, politics, health, all those things, we can create a better city, we can create a better state, and we can create a better country. Because we start in the house, in us. So for me, to my country to be better, I need to be better. So that I can provide to my family. If my family is better, my surroundings will be better. And we create a shared blessing to, whoever's around us.
I see people like yourself as very needed to lead us beyond just the personal growth conversation. People like yourself are exactly what's needed to do that educating. Because old-fashioned educational models are not going to be listened to by a younger generation. You know what I'm saying? Einstein said we will not solve the problems of the world from the level of thinking we were at when we created them. We need 21st century thinkers to do the educating. So my hope, like if I am president ever, you would be the kind of person I would call to the White House to talk to, more than certain Hispanic leaders who were already part of the system as it is. I would listen to them, but my whole campaign is about, no, there's a system. The answer is not coming from there. That's a system that drove us into the ditch. That's not the system that's going to lead us out. So when you talk about a new beginning, it's a new sensibility. It's a new kind of conversation that's going to provide the solutions and give birth to the new path forward. So expect a call from me.
Absolutely. I would love to. I would love to be there for sure. So that's something that I really see. And like you said, we learn different. We see things different. And
are you talking about Hispanics or younger people?
Younger people, it doesn't matter.
Okay,
it
good.
Doesn't matter.
I agree with you.
It doesn't matter.
Well, you're 21st century people.
Yeah.
The mindset of the 20th century is different than the mindset of the 21st. The mindset of the 20th is very mechanistic. The world's a machine. If you don't like the machine, you tweak the pieces of the machine. It's all about the symptoms. It's not about root cause. 21st century thinking is far more holistic, whole person. I don't just look at, the president looks at the economic data. I look at the human despair.
Yep. I like that. So one of the things that we love to do is creating the valuable content like this kind of stuff. So I always use the word we, because the main purpose of this life is sharing and helping others. If you really think about it, imagine having this wealth and being rich and all how those amazing things, right? But if you're alone, the purpose of life is helping others.
That's right.
That's all it is.
So we have to have an economic system that aligns with that. On one hand, we have the idea of the rugged individualist, the entrepreneur goes out there. I'm all for that. I mean, my own career is a product of this extraordinary opportunity that I've had, and writing books. I get all that. But this rugged individualism has become rugged narcissism. The idea of the first principle here is that government is to broker the relationship between individual liberty, everybody going out there doing what you want, making it happen, versus concern for the common good. We have to do both. A conscious person doesn't want to feel I create wealth at the expense of other people having a chance to. I want every child in America to be able to reasonably assume that if they work hard enough, they could live right here, where you live.
I love it.
That's what I want.
Yes.
This is why older people matter. I see older people as the keepers of the story. I'm here to tell you, it didn't used to be this way. I understand that for you, you've never seen it be different. When I was your age, it was different. That's why there's this interesting intergenerational thing going on. Because, and I'm not whitewashing or romanticizing American capitalism before, but there was a sense that the corporation was supposed to care. People were supposed to be good. There was some healthy shame in the culture that when systems operated with no ethical or moral concern for people, we all knew that. And then we thought, well, that's not right. So it's interesting to hear you say that because you haven't seen anything else. And that's why I think a president who kind of becomes a bridge and says to you, as older people can, I talk about what it was in the 70s or whatever. People in the audience who are my age, nod our head. But I understand you've never seen it. And also I understand how dangerous that is, because that's why I see so many younger people spiraling down, feeling hopeless. It's never been any different. Well, actually, honey, it was different. 10 years before you were born, it was different. And that's why people like yourself are so important. Let's give people, because it's not either or. It's not internal change or external change. It's both and. It's both and. So it's very, it's like you work on doing the personal, which is, I have a 40-year career in. I'm there working on the symptom, the policy level, and also everybody has to become both now.
Right.
Everybody has to begin to see political activism as simply a layer of a well-lived, meaningful life, and all of us, as we're really going to get there, no matter what the government does, is going to have to get those internal dynamics in line.
Absolutely.
With true victory and abundance.
Yeah, I believe in this quote that says, don't give a man a fish, show them how to fish.
Yeah.
How do you think? What do you think about that?
I think you gotta have both.
You have both.
Because what does it help if you're telling him how to fish, but he doesn't have, if he doesn't he doesn't have a fishing rod.
Of course.
You can show him how to fish, but other people have the fishing rod. So, there's a lack, that statement can be misused.
Yeah. So, was your question answered? Yeah? Good? Okay. Perfect. Something else that you want to add to, the people that will see this podcast?
The other thing that I'd like to add for your listeners who are in Nevada particularly is that if you are a registered Democrat, and even if you're not a registered Democrat, you can become a registered Democrat to vote in the primary. You can make the difference. You're an early primary state. I think a lot of people probably don't realize how much power the Nevada voter has. So please register as a Democrat if you feel that this campaign speaks your truth. If you want to unregister and become something else the day after, that's okay as well. That's legal. This is the moment, though. There's no waiting now. There's no, this idea of incremental changes is not going to get it done. We are 6 inches from the cliff, and too many of the stress points are unsustainable, both in people's lives and in the society. So I hope that people will think very seriously about whether or not the conversation you and I have had is the conversation that should dominate the consciousness of the person sitting in the Oval Office. And if you do, please go to Marianne2024.com. Please register to vote. Please volunteer. Please donate. And on February 7th, please vote for me.
Absolutely.
February 6th, actually.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Well, it was a pleasure having you, and I'm sure this information will reach out a lot of people.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can, work together in the future.
Thank
somehow.
you. Thank you. I hope so as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.